good afternoon, morning to some of those in other time zones. My name's Amanda. I'm with the Association of Luxury Suite Directors, and I'll be your moderator for today. Hopefully talking a whole lot less than our brilliant panelists will be. Before we jump into the panel, just a couple reminders about the ALSD conference, which is coming up. The 2022 ALSD Conference, Design and Build Forum and Technology Symposium is this July 10 to 12 in New York City. If you need more information, of course, you can visit alsd.com or email me at any time, amanda@alsd.com. Of course, as always, we will have education, a trade show, and 3 incredible venue tours. This year, we're headed out to Barclays Center, UBS Arena, and USTA's Billie Jean King National Tennis Center. Newer to ALSD this year, and fitting actually for our panel discussion today, is our technology symposium. We'll be covering topics from innovation to revenue generation, fan engagement to sponsor activation, and BI and analytics. If you'd like more information on that particular segment of ALSD, email jessica@alsd.com. And we are on to our panel, guys. Mission critical is what it's called, a digital transformation. Certainly audience members can feel free to ask questions. We have a lot of our own to get to today, so TBD if we'll be able to get to them, but fire them in there, take part in the conversation if you'd like. First, we'd like to do some quick introductions of our panelists here. So I threw our panel a curveball when I sent the introduction script, and I said they have to tell us their name, company, what they do, and also a fun fact about tech. So if we end up with like people's dogs' names or something like that, everybody can blame me, but everyone's supposed to give a fun fact about tech. So Samantha, I'm going to toss it to you first for that name, title, who it is you work for, and maybe a fun fact about tech.
Definitely. I read that, so I'm prepared. Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Samantha Powell, Manager of Industry Advocacy with AVIXA. So we are the Audio Visual and Integrated Experience Association. So we are partners with ALSD and wanted to thank Amanda and them for putting this together and having me on today's panel. A little bit about AVIXA. So we serve as the catalyst for growth and a hub of information for the pro AV industry. So our members are the manufacturers, systems integrators, technology managers, all those AV professionals who are actually putting together those immersive experiences in sports and entertainment venues worldwide. So one fun fact that I can share about our industry, thanks to our market intelligence team, is that digital signage this year is forecasted to be about a $35 billion industry, and it's going to be increasing to about $35 billion this year, and it's going to increase to about $45 billion in 2026. So it's an industry that's definitely on the incline, and we can expect to see continued momentum in the future.
Good stats to start us off with. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you to AVIXA. You guys have been partners of ours for a very long time, and we appreciate it and appreciate you being on, Samantha. Thank you. Let's jump over to Mike next.
Thanks, Amanda. First of all, thank you to both yourself and Bill and ALSD for inviting me to partake in this panel. Great opportunity, and also a pleasure to be on the Technology Innovation Committee. Mike Conley, I'm a Chief Information Officer for the Cavaliers and Fieldhouse and the franchise properties associated with the operating company and Rock Entertainment Group. Oversee everything from information technology, emerging technology, data governance, business intelligence, and other problems that get thrown our way throughout the course of the business year or the fiscal year. I'm going to take a very blanket approach to this, something I tell my team a lot about what we do, because we're problem solvers and solution providers and a service team, that the only thing constant about change is change itself. So with technology, if we're not changing, we're dying. So I live and die by that edge.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thanks so much for joining us. Bill, I'm going to toss it over to you.
Bill Anderson with AmThink. AmThink is a systems integrator. We build networks for sports and entertainment venues, and I've been involved in 80 plus venues over the past 10 years. My interesting tech fact is that the most amount of Wi-Fi data that I've participated, or that was consumed at an event I participated at, was not the Super Bowl, but BTS.
Wow. Yeah, we have heard that the amount of pictures and Wi-Fi and all that needed at concerts like that for the young people is pretty incredible. So understood. I like that fact. And round us out here.
Thanks, Amanda. Ann Gaffigan, Director of Technology at Dimensional Innovations, also known as DI. We are a design, build, technology, and innovation firm. Have worked in one way or another with the other panelists. We're members of AVIXA and worked at SoFi Stadium with some AmThink team members and have worked with the Cavaliers. So it's an honor to be alongside you all on this panel today. And my fun fact is courtesy of our Slack channel. We always have some fun tidbits posted in there by various team members at DI that I think this morning it was the 2014 Nobel Prize was won by 3 scientists for figuring out how to make blue LEDs.
Wow. All right.
For some reason it's a much bigger challenge than the other colors.
I guess so. A lot of blue. Okay, so the fun fact that I heard on the radio this morning was in 1844 on this day, the first telegram was sent. So all of a sudden we could see what everybody else was doing in other cities right away. So I thought that was kind of fun. And I actually wasn't prepared to give that, but taking my kid to school today, I heard that one. So at any rate, let's jump into the panel. We're going to start with case histories and in-person experiences that we're all going through right now. Yes, our venues are back open. We'll also talk about ROI, segmentation, up-leveling our digital boards and F&B. We'll talk data and research. We'll talk social. We'll talk about technology that fans love. We'll also talk lessons learned and look to the future. So we'll start out with the questions. And as my panel knows, when they come off of mute is my cue to be quiet and let the conversation be had itself. But Mike, I'm going to toss it to you to start with the first question. And in a few sentences, since you're sitting in the chair of a recent transformation, we'd love you to tell us about the recent digital transformation at the Cavs Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, perhaps why your team made some of the decisions that you did, and even more specifically, what pain points were addressed.
Well, thanks for that meatball. I appreciate it. I think a lot of folks in my position at other clubs and teams have gone through something similar, going through the planning of something similar. And you can look at this one of two ways. You're either going to go into a new building where you've got the ability to be able to create space and opportunity through, creative thinking and collaboration with architects and others. And you've got retrofits where you've got to deal with existing infrastructure and technology where your bones may be good. You've maybe lost touch with the modernization of the building over time. Our case definitely fell into the latter. The building originally was built in 1994. By the time we started to break ground on the transformation project, it was one of the oldest buildings in the NBA that either resided in the city that had plans for a new venue or had already gone through a transformation project of their own. So when you look at a transformed building, first thing you got to do is what are you trying to accomplish, right? We knew we needed to increase the amount of bandwidth we had available for fan engagement that was very different in current day from what it was back in 1994. And the easiest way to get the most juice out of the squeeze for a long-term project like that, if we're looking to modernize the building for the next 20, 25 years, is to really look at infrastructure and where we were at current day versus where we needed to be long-term based upon some of the demands we were seeing from the fan experience side. So if you think back to 1994, the internet really wasn't around, right? It was in its early infancy. The idea of people living in a connected community didn't exist. Our IDF closets at the time were fax closets, right? Or communication closets, as they called them. So when you're dealing with limited space and inventory for a high demand infrastructure need, you've got to start by stripping it down and starting to build from the ground up. And the belief is that if you get your infrastructure right, whether it be through your local area network, your Wi-Fi network, your distributed antenna service network, you're going to be able to layer on a lot of stuff on top of that that I would call the window dressing. That's plug and play over time. Technology is going to evolve, but the infrastructure as a foundation should remain constant to be able to support what you need. So we were in a 1 gigabit environment. We upgraded to a 10 gig outbound bandwidth with redundancy. And then we also upgraded our Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi 6 protocol, which allowed us to take in 16,000 current users from about 5,000 of what we would max out previously. And then the available bandwidth per client was also increased to be able to support the needs of social sharing, video streaming, et cetera. With our goals being any device or individual that came into our venue, whether they were a traditionalist fan, meaning like they wanted to take in the event and really focus on the sport, or if they were a new age fan that wanted to take advantage of all the amenities and the bells and whistles of what taking in a live sports and an entertainment event would be. We needed to cover the spectrum across the board. So once we focused on getting the infrastructure correct and modernizing that, was able to also grow our data center to be able to support our growth there. We had about 286 square feet beforehand, and we upgraded to a whopping 700 square feet. So go figure there. Not quite the Taj Mahal, but something that certainly gave us some more infrastructure and space to work with. Now, that foundation was really critical for thinking about how we were going to transform the building as a whole. And there were two main areas of technology we wanted to focus on, with the goal of creating a venue that became a dynamic canvas to take on the thematic of the event we were hosting. Previously, everything was very static, right? We had these spectaculars that were the old-fashioned printed posters behind these lighted signs. And when you came to a concert, you felt like you were in a basketball venue. And when you came to a basketball game, it was the only time you really felt like you were fitting into the venue it was meant for. So we looked at both our TV solution or digital signage solution, and we went from RF-based distribution to IP-based distribution with a centralized content management system that allows us to zone and segment out a bunch of different messaging and menu signage, et cetera, across the venue, depending on different levels of the venue. And then we also focus on our lighting, and LED lighting has come a long way, and full spectrum RGBW lighting allows us to create these unique color thematics that takes on the look and feel of the event. So now when you come into the building, you truly feel like you're coming into a building that's embraced the event itself as opposed to a square peg round hole. Those two elements have made a significant difference in the fan experience for the way people are coming in, because when you have a dynamic canvas, it really comes down to the quality of your content development and your engagement strategy to leverage all these beautiful endpoints that you've got in your building to create a great experience. And we rolled the dice with that approach without maybe looking at too much, sexy window dressing, for lack of a better term. And we really wanted sustainability out of this, and we're still breaking it in, being operators coming out of the pandemic, but really excited about the capabilities and the centralization of the management of all this that we have now for the venue at the Fieldhouse here in Cleveland.
And for BTS when they come in town, it sounds like you're a well-oiled machine for BTS to be your next concert at Mortgage Fieldhouse. So we'll work on that. And Mike talked about some things that I think you can take us even further down the path on with this in-person experience. Now that we're back, how does technology enhance it and reduce pain points? And I like where he was going too with, you have this canvas and all of a sudden, how do you activate that canvas? So perhaps you could walk us through that. It was a bit of a two-part question, but Anne, the mic is yours.
Yeah. No, I was thinking the same thing as Mike was talking, that the infrastructure is everything. And it allows, companies like us to come in and do so many more things than we would have been able to do, 10 years ago, much less 1994, right? So, a lot of times our task is to come in and help the sponsors activate in their area of the concourse or wherever they have chosen to engage fans. And the better the technology, Wi-Fi 6 and then in the future Wi-Fi 7, the more we're able to do. The location detection gets much more accurate. The data and analytics that we can gather and use gets much better and more robust. And so, what we're trying to do is reduce pain and increase reasons why you would come to the in-arena, in-stadium experience rather than stay at home, which means making it better than it used to be and making it better than staying at home. So when I say reduce pain, I'm talking about, optimizing and reducing the amount of time you're in lines, so optimizing, finding parking, finding the bathroom, finding something to eat. When you want to watch the game, being able to watch as much of the game as possible and not waste a lot of time waiting in line to do things. And then when you want to break from the game for whatever reason, having some fun, interactive experiences to go entertain yourself with and everything in between. So just, reducing pain, but adding some fun and some experiences that you can't get at home that are unique to being there in person. And absolutely, the IT infrastructure has so much to do with that.
Yeah, it does. And I would echo all of those things and add that our venues are now even more inclusive than ever. Some forced to stay at home because they might have had, different reasons why they couldn't attend sports venues, and now they can. So I would just add that layer to it as well. And I think technology is a catalyst for that as well. Back to the boards, a little bit more specifically, digital menu boards. Bill, you said something the other day, and I laughed at it. You said we want to romance the food. What the heck does that mean? And how do we do it?
I think the digital canvas that Mike was talking about has given us new capabilities. Traditionally, menu boards were static items. We kind of migrated them over to becoming, digital versions of static menu boards where we had an item and, the cost of the food possibly. What digital signage does is gives us the ability to actually add graphics and to add video and to create the opportunity to make that sale for that food item more interesting or appetizing to the fan. And to be honest, it really moves beyond food. You can romance the food or romance other items, but it's this idea that we can take this digital canvas, we can put some really great creative on top of it, we can bring in some interesting personalities through video, and we can couple them with something we want to sell. And by doing that, we can increase that per cap, right? And that's really the story behind those digital menu boards. Isn't just that we operationally made it easier to run the building, we've created the opportunity to drive more sales. And that's true for food and for other items.
Yeah, and I think those other items are what Mike touched on before, and that's wayfinding. Like, can we romance the wayfinding? Back in the day, signage was there for utility and to get people where they needed to go. But now it's telling us, the shorter wait times, where the discounted food is and all of that stuff. So, Mike, I'll let you take it from here and talk about wayfinding and perhaps a way that it's become, again, not just a utility, but an enhancement.
Yeah, I think it's become a very important part of the event experience, especially for multi-use venues. There's one thing to be in a venue where you've got 41 games over the season where you're bringing back a fan base that's already familiar with your building. It's another thing where you've got a multi-use building where you may have one person that comes to your venue every 5 years based upon a show that's coming in. And when you transform a venue, we went through, with the help of Dimensional Innovation, ironically, a very substantial overhaul of our wayfinding and the way that we were labeling all of our floors, our bombs, and our seating sections. We were in a very antiquated, confusing floor structure that, when you were on the event level, you're actually on level 3. And people were very confused, thinking 300 level tickets should have been on 3 and all this other thing, to a portal system, which was go to this portal, you get in, find your section, row, and seat. So even the concept of changing that in a simplistic form, which was, kind of creating more intuitive opportunities for fans to find their seats, still needed to have a utility to help support that. And today, with mobile phones basically being in everybody's pockets, you can do indoor mapping in conjunction with real-time location services, depending if somebody is on your Wi-Fi network or on the DAS network, to be able to create, really direct personalized information instructions for an individual to get to the location that they're seeking to arrive at within the venue. So we strategically placed wayfinding kiosks at our main points of entry that people can go up, put in the information of where their seats or tickets are, or where the amenity that they were trying to find. And it would kick back a direct text message to those individuals with step-by-step directions on how to get there. I think it's the start to the evolution of what eventually will become a companion utility of the device, almost being an object recognition set of lenses that will see information for people inside the venue and feed to them in real time what they're looking for, and then eventually allow them to engage directly with buying mobilely through a mobile order, or ordering retail to their seat, or just consuming basic information that will get them to their experience in a very comfortable, faster way than previously. But the evolution of that really is predicated on having, I don't want to be the old IT guy beating the dead drum. The infrastructure has to support the connectivity to the mobile device, and the consistency and the reliability of that connectivity has to be spot on for that user to embrace that experience. So as we evolve these and look at augmented reality and object recognition, we're really only scratching the surface, I think, on what fans will be able to realize when they come into these venues, whether it be the first time or, the 50th time within a specific season, but very important to the overall experience as a whole.
Real quick, is there kind of a push-pull to this? Like, if I come into a venue and it knows it's my 50th time and I always head to the hot dog stand. Will there be recognition that sophisticated at some point?
I think it's already there. I think the biggest challenge, I'm seeing in sports and entertainment, and this is part of an evolution of industry practices in general. Like there was this big push to build up business intelligence groups inside sports organizations because everybody needed to look at data and analytics around the support of projected revenues and net revenues. But we're at a really exciting time in data productization now, where we have streaming data that's available to help complement these edge-based applications to create hyper-personalization around these visits as people come in. I think the key thing is, and part of this, there's privacy that has to toe the line with the personalization. So we have to understand, first and foremost, who an individual is at a one-to-one level, right? We're still dealing with this very challenging one-to-many ratio between tickets and fans coming into venues. A lot of that's predicated on secondary market sales opportunities and moving tickets, but that's why we're adding in these utilities like, Wi-Fi that's for free with great bandwidth to try to get people that may be one of those 4 tickets that may not have been the named individual coming to the venue to log on, provide their information, and opt in based upon the preferences that they want to be communicated with. And when that happens, there's a very sophisticated back end now that is sending out information to a database that is saying, what do we know about this individual user? How many times have they come to the venue? What do they drink when they come to the venue? What do they generally eat when they come to the venue? And then you start building in these logic-based decisioning engines that says, if this person arrives at this time, around this time frame, deliver them a customized coupon based upon the hot dog and the beer that they had last time they were at the venue. All that is completely possible at this point in time. I think where we have to refine all of that is getting better with how we're handling the segmentation of data and structuring the information to be delivered in a very, very lean way. So when you think about evolving frameworks and technologies like serverless technology that doesn't take these bulk payloads and having to send information over and structure all this stuff, you can take streaming data now in lightweight applications and deliver contextual information to an individual as they need it, when they want it, and where they're at, which is really, really exciting. And I think, again, this evolution is going to continue down the path of creating this hyper-personalized experience inside our venues.
Thank you. It's all really fascinating. We talked a lot about utility and awareness, and they may not be sexy words, but when we're digitally transforming our venues, we got to satisfy both. So tactically, how do we take these assets, make them not only operational, but harmonious, Bill? Is that something you can address?
Sure. So I think the biggest thing is we as an industry have to stop thinking about things in silos. So we tend to have situations where people come into a venue and they are there to solve a tactical problem. Mike talks about Wi-Fi. They're there to put a new Wi-Fi system in, or they're there to build an activation. It could be a sign that you're putting in place for a specific partner that's made an investment in your facility. And we build that thing out and we forget to think about technology holistically. And I think as we want to project forward and achieve that vision that Mike talked about, all of these systems have to intercommunicate. So we want to talk about shared compute infrastructure. We want to bring data center technology into the venue, and we want to use that as the foundation for all of the applications that run in the building. We want to make sure that we're building a pervasive fiber optic network to support connectivity to the venue and all of the areas attached to the venue where we want to engage fans. And then, at the end of that fiber optic cabling, we want to put that networking in place that's going to support all of those applications. I think, as we do that and we bring these systems together and allow them to intercommunicate over a converged solution rather than in siloed solutions, we make these things possible. And it's that possibility that, different vendors can come in and step on top of or build on top of in order to take and achieve better fan outcomes. And I think, DI is a great example. We had a really wonderful partnership in LA working with them where it's exactly that shared infrastructure that enabled them to put the signage in place and project that signage outside of the stadium to the edge of the property. And that's really a new point of engagement that drew people in earlier and created more monetization opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't work without that. And it's also just extremely limiting without that collaboration. So, all of those things are interconnected. And, in order for in order for the data to be used, in order for the fan to have, a seamless experience, in order for, the connection to be really strong, and frankly, in order for things to just run smoothly and there to not be a bunch of issues when switching the stadium AV from concert mode to game mode, right? All of those systems have to be put together properly, and it's no small feat, but it's very worth the initial upfront investment, time and money wise, to get it right, and then be able to build on top of it going forward.
Stay on SoFi, because Bill, you and I are chatting about these complexes now. It's not only harmonious in the buildings, but it's these complexes, and we're modeling, a lot of what we've seen in the past 5-6 years. Big venues, big complexes, small venues with complexes. What are we seeing with these complexes, and how do we make those, not just a venue, but the complex itself, pretty harmonious as well?
Again, I think that's the opportunity to think about it from a technology perspective holistically. SoFi was a wonderful opportunity. We had a CIO who was very progressive and, said, hey, I want everything to work together at the very front end of the project. And he gave us that mandate, and, we were able to execute on it. But it's really understanding that, you can't stop at the drip line of the building. You've got to take and think about where those other activations are going to take place, how you're going to take and engage people long term. What are the other amenities that you're going to offer? Are you going to take and attach retail to it? Are you going to attach residential to it? What is your commercial aspirations from an office space perspective? And think about all those things up front, so that as you build that infrastructure, you're building the support that you need in order to make those business models successful. And then importantly, you put all those things there to get people onto the campus, right? That was the whole point, is we wanted to create more commercial transactions. So once I created the opportunity to support those business models, how do I then capture that excitement about being on the property and convert that into new fans, right? And it's a really kind of virtuous circle. The success of the campus itself drives more traffic, which creates more commercial opportunity, which creates fans, which then come to the building, which creates more interest in the property. And I think that's the vision we're seeing from the folks who are building these mixed-use complexes, is it's an opportunity to take and grow that fan base long-term. And, we've got to be smart about supporting them with that digital infrastructure.
Yeah, and you talked about getting people's attention. Samantha, you've got, Avixa obviously is heavy in the research space, and you've got some interesting data about getting and keeping people's attention while they're either on the campus or in the venues. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, definitely. So going off a little of what Bill had said in terms of romancing what you want to sell using digital signage, the purpose of using digital signage in the first place is to create something visually appealing to grab your attention and to get, your messaging across, whether it's to inform or entertain or promote or sell. So there have been various studies that, we've just looked at that include some from Nielsen and some from Facebook. But it pretty much says that you have about 2 seconds to grab someone's attention and about 20 seconds to hold it. So I'm sure we all know, as we're scrolling through our phones and you see a video in your news feed or on Facebook, it doesn't take you that long to either click on it because you're interested, or you're going to scroll right past it and go to something else that catches your eye. So if you really want to maximize the value of your display, it's really important to understand your ecosystem and your audience and the objectives of your messaging to help make the right decision on your digital signage investment.
Stay on that for a minute. You guys work obviously heavy in the audiovisual space, but from what you guys have studied, tell us what other data helps us in making the right decisions and the right investments. It's a word you just used. Anything that you can add to the conversation there?
Sure. So in a digital signage environment, from a cost perspective, it's actually the back end systems where most of your investment is going to be made compared to the actual displays itself. So our market intelligence tells us about in 2021, the media servers that actually manage the content distribution on the displays is what accounted the most at what was spent in 2021. So for example, those media displays and those servers, that accounted for about $7 billion in 2021 compared to about $6 billion for the actual displays themselves. So you're really going to want to invest in a good digital signage software and the content management system behind it. So you want to make sure that that's reliable, because that's going to save you the most time, create automation, so you don't have to go into that system every day and make changes. So that's going to really get you your greatest ROI in terms of the back end systems. Other considerations that you're going to take into account include really understanding the difference between consumer versus commercial grade products. So we found that cutting corners doesn't always save you money. You think you're getting something cheaper, you're going to buy it out of the box at a Best Buy, but in the end, you're going to really end up paying a premium on other unforeseen costs, and including like installation costs that you might not have thought of or operational costs for the product life cycle. So cutting costs doesn't always save you money. For example, if you also look at the warranties in comparison with commercial versus consumer grade, in the fine print in regards to the warranties, if you use a consumer screen in a commercial setting, you'll find that your warranty, you may only get 30 days on that. But if you buy a commercial screen for your enterprise setting, your warranty is going to last you for at least 3 to 5 years. And so if you look at it in terms of, let's say, operating time, right? The computer screen that you're going to buy that you would normally put in your house, how long is that going to be on? That's going to be on for maybe 5 to 8 hours a day. But what's the lifespan of that consumer TV going to be in your stadium, right? It's going to be running 24/7, 365. So are you going to have a consumer display in your stadium that you only have about 30 days warranty on and it's going to be running 24/7? What are your out-of-pocket costs going to be? So eventually you're going to have to get that replaced. So that's another thing just to think about in terms of investment when you're looking at consumer versus commercial products. One other thing to note that you may want to look at in terms of investments is an external control capability and remote monitoring. So if you're using these displays, obviously you want to get out your targeted messaging, right? So if it's for informational or promotional purposes, either way, that's why it's there. So you really want to have some sort of reliable software in the back end that's going to give you overall visibility so that you can actually control it from one centralized location. Right? You want to be able to know, like, okay, so I've got this message on this screen or this screen and this location isn't working. I mean, being able to control all of that in one centralized place, that's really going to help cut down on your costs and also just give you that visibility that you're going to need and want. So those are ways to help to, bolster your ROI. So just overall recommendations. If you really want to maximize your digital signage ROI, we say make the investment upfront and do it with a higher quality life cycle product. And you want to look for extended warranties, as well as service and maintenance plans, because let's face it, these products will eventually need to get serviced. So if you really want to extend the life of your products, make the investments up front so that they can last you 3, 5, or 10 years.
Thanks so much, Samantha. I really appreciate all the intel. I'm going to shift focus and go kind of fan facing. What are fans? What's some technology that fans can't get enough of these days? And in a moment, we'll also talk about shareable moments. So Mike and Ann, I'm going to toss it over to either one of you that wants to start. But let's talk about some of those technologies and shareable moments that just fan facing people can't get enough of.
And chivalry's not dead, so I'll let you take the the podium there.
I appreciate it. So lately, the number one thing that is in demand from our perspective in arenas and stadiums is a photo op, or in some cases it's a video op. But any way for a fan to have a, sometimes we call it Instagrammable moment, and that can take on a lot of forms, right? You can be completely analog, where we just, we are going to build a giant helmet that's taller than you on our shop floor, and we're going to put it somewhere where you can stand in front of it and take a picture. So no tech needed, really cool picture opportunity. Then the next level might be, hey, if we mount a camera here and you stand here, it is a fantastic view of you with the stadium behind you. And so we can set that up so that you don't have to, stretch your arm longer than it stretches or ask someone to take a photo. You can just use the kiosk, say, I want to take a picture, go stand on the spot and have it texted or emailed to you. So that's kind of next level. And then the most fun things that we've been able to do from a photo video ops standpoint is to have the ability for you to take a picture or a video with some AR props. So, stand in front of a screen, try on the helmet, try on the jersey, grab a guitar, grab some sparklers, that kind of thing, and then capture yourself doing that. And it's fun. It's fun to kind of observe, once we set something like that up, how people are using it. And yes, they like to save it and share it and all of that, but sometimes they just want to walk up to it and mess with it and stand there for a while engaging. And so, again, it's that in-person experience, and then hopefully they're sharing it as well, because that's just increased return on investment for the sponsor. All right, Mike, it's your turn.
Is Mike frozen?
Oh, I thought he was just listening intently.
I know, I thought he was too. He looks like he's really serious right now. So it's interesting because we had a question come in while you were talking, Ann, about the uptick of field-based AR experience and projection mapping the stadium and field and ice. Is that something that you can touch on?
Can you read that one more time?
Yeah, for sure. We were asked if the panel is seeing an uptick of field-based AR experience or projection mapping of the stadium and field and ice.
So AR for sure. And there's so many fun things you can do with that from what I just mentioned, which is just, picture looking at a screen and having, filters applied, right? As if kind of like a Snapchat filter or an Instagram filter. But also just being able to scan a QR code and all of a sudden have a 3D rendering that looks like it's literally the mascot standing in front of you, or anything else that you can imagine, right? So, and I think they called it mixed reality, but seems like all the same to me sometimes. That falcon the raven that they showed flying through the stadium. That was a couple years ago, and really, really cool. Honestly, it's not that hard to pull off, not to diminish what was done, but that is very, very doable these days, as long as you have a great 3D model and, the right team that knows how to set that up. So from a projection mapping standpoint, it's going to take a specific use case to really be effective, because if you're outside, that's not going to work very well. Just there's way too much ambient light. Even in a venue like SoFi Stadium, there's quite a bit of ambient light, even though it is covered. So because it's pretty perforated. But certainly you can do that in an indoor arena where you can control the lighting, or for a night game. We personally have been much more involved in doing that in corporate spaces and also in locker rooms. So a lot of times we're shining with the logo down on the floor, so it takes up the majority of the floor. But can just as easily be done with the right lighting on any surface.
Yeah, and I thought Mike was going to come back to us in like a hologram form, just to really
just to show off.
Yeah, like virtual reality type thing. But Mike, anything to add on the AR experience or projection mapping at your venue?
Yeah, all the great talk about infrastructure, and here I am bounced off the Zoom call, so sorry about that. But listen, there's the fan. I think thinking about what the fan wants to see, what can we deliver that a fan can't get anywhere else, and how can we leverage the technology we have in our venue to create an experience and a moment that is going to galvanize that experience amongst the individual that they're at the event with, or sending them home to talk about what they just witnessed and saying, I want to go back and I want to do that again. We have these huge venues and these great chances to do that, but we're also battling at the same time with, density issues where you got people that are coming out of the woodwork trying to get into the same areas. So, our throughput areas and all these other spaces is where we really tried to focus to put technology to disrupt the mindset of the user that they may be getting pinched based upon density areas of ingress or egress, because at that point, if they're looking around them and really taking in the experience, they're not worrying so much about the line they're standing in or the challenges they have of trying to get into a concourse and eventually to their seat. So, the areas of ingress for us as part of the transformation project were a big focal point to create that wow moment on the point of ingress. And the two main areas that we have, the northeast and the northwest side of our new atrium, features two significant direct view LED structures. One we call the Canyon, which is a 65-foot, 6mm direct view LED board, and the other, the Power Portal, which is a fully immersive 180-degree soundscape supported audio platform that has both audio and visual capabilities as fans are walking through to create something they've never seen before. I mean, that's not something a fan's going to be able to replicate in their own home, right? You're not going to be able to walk through your bedroom door and out into your, living room to go watch a great, football, basketball, or hockey game. So when you do that, you've got the ability to create the wow moment, but then it still comes down to your content producers. Your content producers have to really be unique and think differently about how they're delivering that information to the screen. And it's not about long form content. I think Samantha made a great point. We've got 20 seconds of time to try to capture and create that memory for an individual. So a lot of very looping content that is high impact, that gets people excited to go in to experience these events. But at the end of the day, when you create those landmarks, that creates your shareable moments. People are stopping in those locations because it's something unique that they haven't seen before or experienced before. And they want to showcase to everybody that they were part of that experience at some point in time. And in doing that, if you do it right, and there is no right science to it, right? Some are successful, some aren't, depending on when you're going to the drawing board. But you create evangelists, you create marketing evangelists that start to sell your brand on your behalf through their social channels and all these other areas that talk about the experience, that create their friends wanting to come to the venue to have similar experiences along the way. So, the ability to create a spectrum of technology that can cover as many different needs and solve as many problems for the fan experience is very, very hard to do. But if you ride your strengths and know what your fans are asking for and you listen to them in that process, you'll be really surprised at how you can land on solutions that really deliver a home run, when you're investing significant monies in trying to transform a space. Yeah,
and what you just said is you're creating loyalty, and that loyalty bleeds out to those that they're sharing with, and by and large creates revenue. Something that we're all focused on. Bill, there might though be maybe layers or pockets of revenue that we don't know that we could find in our venues yet. Are there any secrets that you can give us today about how to enhance our revenue capabilities?
Well, I think the first thing to think about is just the overall investment we've made, right? So as you start to look at these systems that we built, we're really talking about using them on a very limited basis. It could be a dozen times or maybe 40 times a year that we're really going to flex the capabilities of this digital infrastructure that we've built. And so I think the opportunity is to think of other activations outside of game day, outside of an event day, that we can leverage that infrastructure to take and create opportunities to have new events inside of the building, right? These are very powerful digital assets. And so esports is a great example. I think that there are a lot of venues that are aspirationally looking at esports and saying, hey, I've got a venue, I've got the internet connectivity, I've built the compelling Wi-Fi infrastructure to host people. And by the way, esports engages people for a longer duration. How do I get that into my building? And that's just one example. I think concerts and things like Tony Robbins have been around for a long time, drive a lot of interest. They require that connectivity, that shareable moment, that kind of infrastructure to support that. So I think it's using that or selling that digital infrastructure to other opportunities or other businesses that want to come in and use that digital infrastructure kind of as an opportunity that we see, and that's where we see this mixed-use facility really becoming very popular, right? Building around the building to leverage the capabilities of the building, or even if you're not going to use the capabilities of the building, soccer's a great example where there's tremendous sensitivity around people being on the pitch. I've still got that digital infrastructure. Can I build a space adjacent to it that instead of it being active for 40 days out of the year, that portion of the building is active 200 days out of the year? And I think if venues start to think of that ability to extend that infrastructure, bring in these complementary events, they're going to create new revenue opportunities that get back to that virtuous cycle that I talked about before.
The Tony Robinson, is that the one with the screen with all the people that are watching live? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, and of course, then you got to walk out in the parking lot too, and so now you need digital infrastructure in the parking lot, and you bring them back into the building. So it can be really, it's amazing. It's a huge revenue generator. I realize not all that money goes to the venue, but a lot of it goes to Mr. Roberts. But it's pretty compelling to see that because he needs that type of space in order to have that engagement with his fan base. And those fans are the same people that can be converted from that event into fans of the traditional, events that are taking place in the building. They're getting exposed to a new place because they're coming to see a different experience.
And the venue has to have the infrastructure and the capabilities to actually do that, or they won't attract people that will, again, by and large, extend your brand. So I think it's important to note that those types of acts, if you will, can't come into your venue if you're not supported with the right infrastructure. And I think, again, that's an important thing to point out. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, when we get set and we build and we make these investments to transform the buildings or build these new venues, right? There's only so much you're going to be able to switch out and layer in and reimagine year over year. Getting your data layer correct, where you understand the state of your business at any point in time in which you're operating, so you can augment and modify your throughput capabilities through your key revenue streaming areas like your food and beverage and your retail, I think is a really, really important piece. There's so much attrition that takes place in these high density environments because people get tired of waiting in line. So I'd never like to talk about a silver lining in the pandemic because there's nothing great about 1 million people losing their lives. But what I will tell you, it's accelerated technology adoption and mobile ordering adoption that we saw before the pandemic and post-pandemic is significant. And a move more towards self-service checkout, which means more autonomous opportunities to leverage business automation across your operations, which can lower overhead and generate more revenue for you. But more importantly, if you understand the state of your building as you're operating, you understand your people flow, you understand your congestion areas, you understand your your most visited areas over a period of time, the most visible spaces, then you can optimize where you're bringing your partners in based upon how you prioritize that. But you also can focus on figuring out ways to experiment with technology that's going to help you increase the amount of throughput you can do inside these key revenue areas without, the fall off of attrition that we were seeing previously. So I look at, some of the advancements in RFID barcode technology and the concept of volume-based checkout, right? We've got a brick and mortar team shop that's only about 6,000 square feet. And we've got, in any period of time, 400 to 500 people inside that facility, right? We've got 5 checkout registers in our old team shop. And you can only move that many people through it with traditional 2D barcodes where you got to scan every single item, and each of those transactions takes time, to now saying, okay, yes, we're switching over to an RFID-based system, but what that's going to help us do is manage our inventory much faster, so we know what we have on site at any given time. It can make decisions on what we push and what we don't. We understand where the people are looking at information, and we understand how to move quick product, because now, instead of us having 5 registers with a one-to-one relationship, we've got 5 checkout areas, and we've got one team member that's managing those checkout stations because they're all autonomous. And the other folks can focus their time on the floor upselling product and getting people conditioned to maybe buy a little bit more than what they were originally coming into the store for, providing another level of service that helps increase those revenues. And we're all pushing for higher per caps, right? We're looking at opportunities for food and beverage increases and retail increases. But once we figure that part out, then you can really start to layer in other unique opportunities to experiment with how far across the chasm your fans have come to adopt this technology. Because at the end of the day, if they're not using it, you're spending a lot of money wasting and spinning your wheels to try to get them to adopt it. There's a lot of marketing inventory that's got to go in to create this awareness. So ride your strengths, focus on areas where you can help support and augment revenue and increase those throughputs. Then you're going to start to get buy-in on the other side, right? Because people are seeing and realizing the benefits of what you're creating for fan experience and new revenue channels.
Yeah, thanks. That's really helpful. And that's my little notification that we're up against the clock here. So what I'm going to do here is combine our last two questions and ask if there were cues that are leading us to lessons learned, or if you have your sights set on the future, maybe we learned some things that are setting us up successfully for the future. What could you leave us with today? So I'm going to toss it to Samantha to talk about the future a little bit first.
Yeah, sure. And one of the things that we find that's really important to understand is the desires and the needs of the end user or the fan. So a lot of times we see that there's projects where decisions were made without actually getting consumer buy-in or really even understanding what the true needs of the end user or the fan were. So, making assumptions and, let's just put in this digital solution without really understanding the problem. You've either one, created a problem where there wasn't one in the first place. Two, you're not addressing the underlying issues. And then three, you're probably creating completely new issues. So, one of the things that we think is really important, going forward is just to really make sure that you take the time to understand, what the end user needs and what they're looking for to get a fuller picture of what you actually need to put together to get their buy-in. And just speaking off of the future of things, we're seeing obviously a lot of these stadiums and entertainment hubs, serving multi-purpose operations. So I think we've spoken a lot about how to generate that additional revenue. So we're seeing a lot of these venues think ahead and not only what's best for the fan on that game day, but also how they can use those digital strategies to encompass their non-game day revenue, right? And how they can serve their attendees who aren't using that space just for, just that one event. So we've learned that flexibility and adaptability are really the key that can significantly increase revenue as well as the fan experience, regardless of the event.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think the F1 race down in Miami is a picture of success and telling us what can be done to an extent. Wow, it's gotten a lot of press so far. So using your venue for other things, absolutely making a fan out of everybody. Bill, let's go over to you next.
I think the story from our perspective is convergence, right? Getting away from silos and seeing venues be more successful, getting their technology venues across the stack, starting at broadcast and moving out to that fan layer, work together, build systems that interoperate, that funnel data into that cloud infrastructure that Mike was talking about. Our ability to build that digital highway, that digital infrastructure that feeds into that app stack is going to be what makes the future technologies, things like AR and VR possible. And that's what we're working to do, is to try and build that infrastructure to support those applications and ideas, so that it all works together. I think you used the word harmoniously.
I did. Thank you. Anne.
Well, Mike stole my answer earlier. He said it already happened. I was going to say personalization. Maybe that will just get further and further personalized, to the point where you say something and you notice that something is recommended to you, kind of the creepy way that Instagram serves you ads already and others. But I hope too that the future of all of this innovation and all of the advancements in technology that enable us to get a better ROI also lead to better security in stadiums. It's a place where a lot of people gather together, and whether it's helping a kid find his family or responding to a live shooter or an unfortunate event like that, I think technology will enable us to better respond to those things as well.
A point I wish that we would have hit on earlier. I think the security and the safety of our fans is hugely important. So thank you so much for calling it out to that. Mike, I'm going to let you land this plane, but don't you dare take away the flames in the intro. My kids love that. And then we were up in the nosebleeds the other day. We could feel that. So don't get rid of that technology. Keep the pyro. What else, man? What else you got for the future?
No, it sounds good. I think for us, we've been in such a heavy build mode for the past 4 years of creating this new infrastructure that it's time for us to kind of settle in and become expert operators for those solutions. And it almost becomes a time where we've got to regroup as an organization to create cross-departmental collaboration and ownership to realize how we can take advantage of all this great technology. And at the end of the day, it's about becoming more efficient and better at what we do so we can create a better customer experience on the other end. And that doesn't happen just from a information technology group or a digital team coming up with a concept or an idea. You've got to get people to buy in, to own elements of that, to deliver through on that. And we subscribe to an ism here in the organization that innovation is rewarded, but execution is worshipped. And you've got to be able to execute what you do. If you can't execute on the concepts, it doesn't matter how creative you are, it's going to fall flat and you're going to be back to the drawing board before you know it. So really being smart about having the self-awareness to what you can bite off to start your digital journey and understanding where your biggest opportunities are to create that buy-in. So your chasm of adoption becomes a shared experience where people organizationally are owning part of that process as opposed to somebody dictating it. Because if you're all succeeding in that process together, it's much, much easier on the other end to create the transparency and the accountability that's going to be necessary to be excellent operators.
Dear Mike, please get in touch with Jessica Gaffney, running our tech division. You have written the exact messaging that we're trying to get across to our ALSD group here. This is why we're holding ALSD, our Design and Build Forum, and our Technology Symposium together. You said it beautifully. Again, couldn't have said it better myself, Mike. So thank you for the adoption via all departments. I think that's a great place to end for today. And I want to thank everybody, one, in the audience for joining us, and two, our panel. You guys knocked it out of the park. I'd love to continue this conversation more. Perhaps we will, one at ALSD and certainly virtually in the future. So we invite any and all of you back. So until we see each other in New York, we'll let everyone go today. And again, say thank you and be safe, everyone. Take care.